Welcome to Monday Scoop. I'm Georgia Raisman, and on Monday Scoop, I have short conversations with a variety of experts on issues affecting people over age 55. Whether it's food, health, style, or entertainment, we'll explore ways to lead better and deeper lives as we get older. Hi, I'm Georgia Raisman, and this is Monday Scoop. Today, I'm talking with Dr. Timothy Lepore, a doctor on Nantucket Island, about whom a wonderful book was written a few years ago, which is absolutely worth reading, which details a little bit about his eccentric practice out here and various adventures that have happened since then. But today we're going to talk about somewhat more serious topics. We're going to talk about mental health in the era of the COVID pandemic. But first, Tim, start with a little bit about how you did get here to Nantucket and what your life and practice have been like since then. Again, here and Nantucket and Lyme's, and then moving on.
Well, it's a little convoluted. A good friend of mine took care of the administrative secretary's husband up in Boston. He was a cardiologist. And she, Nancy Jones, invited him to work in the emergency room. So I came and I visited him. And the next year, I worked the month of August. I brought my wife and kids out. And we liked it so much that we were going back Labor Day and said, why are we going back to Providence? So I told Brown I was leaving. They didn't believe me until December 30th. And then it became very real. And I was here in the noon boat January 1st, 1983.
And you've been here ever since. Now, initially, you did a lot of work on Lyme disease, this was an epicenter, and still is an epicenter for Lyme disease and related diseases.
Well, I got very interested in it, and I worked with Andy Spielman from the Harvard School of Public Health, and I met all of these guys that were involved, students of his, and because this was just an odd enough topic for a general surgeon to be involved in, so I've contributed to a certain amount of research. I go pick ticks off dead deer, and it's been very, very interesting and fulfilling. You can only take out a gallbladder so many ways. And so it was really an opportunity to do something really outside of my usual practice, and it sort of blossomed.
Well, I gather, too, because Lyme disease was originally thought of as a disease, and now it's thought of as having these corollary diseases, babesiosis, ehrlichiosis, and I don't know, not Rocky Mountain spotted fever, but related diseases, that some of which people experience on an immediate basis, which you can cure by, I gather, a limited term of antibiotics, and others that seem to come back or recur or can last for quite a long time. Am I correct about that?
Well, I would say babesia was originally Nantucket fever, 1969.
Wow.
Andy described it. In 1976, Alan Steer described this illness in Connecticut, which became Lyme disease. He did not identify the organism. Willie Bugdorfy identified it in a tick on the tip of Long Island and identified the spirochete. Anaplasma, which used to be called Ehrlichia, Sam Telford and I described out here. So we've been involved in all the aspects of it. Now with babesia, you feel like you've been hit by a truck. The treatment was developed here, Mepron and Zithromax. Anaplasma is very responsive to doxycycline. Lyme disease, and when you get it early, is very, very treatable. It's very treatable later on. You can be cured of it, but the longer you have it, you may have somewhat longer lasting problems with it. The real question is, are there persistent organisms? Or are you're seeing the results of antibody gone wrong, for example, your immune system? And there doesn't seem to be great evidence for persistence of organisms. So it's probably a disturbance in the immune system that people continue to have symptoms.
Well, this is one of those things that when we are hearing so much about the immune system these days, that everybody's becoming au courant with how your immune system can go wrong in very, very dramatic ways, which of course leads me up to the COVID issue, the pandemic issue, which we're dealing with now. And now your practice has gone from that to, and you've always done general surgery here and general medicine here, but now you're also focusing on issues relating to COVID and issues relating to, generally on island, to depression, mental health, and things of that sort. And I think in our demographic, the demographic relating to people over 55, it can contain people who are 55, 60, who are looking perhaps at their own children and grandchildren and feeling this dislocation that that generation is having. And then they're also looking upwards at their parents, perhaps, who are 80 or 85 and suffering from isolation and the depression that that comes with that being so isolated, perhaps in a nursing home. As you were observing at some point, there was the major incidences of death from this disease in Massachusetts and New York were initially in nursing homes.
I think it's a real problem. For example, patients down at the Island Home. The Island Home has not had a COVID case because they have it locked up. Now that's all well and good, but some of our senior citizens that are down there miss that connection with their family. It's certainly nice, the nurses are wonderful, but it's not like having your family there. I think we see this on a broader scale with older people in our community who are isolated. They have heard about quarantining. Perhaps they behave better than the baby boomers and whatever the next X generation is. Mm-hmm. And so they listen and they stay home and they become very isolated. And I think it's in a way very damaging. They may not get COVID, but they suffer the complications of isolation. And by that I mean, we're social animals, okay? Whether you're started a bonobo or a chimp and you work up to our group, we're social animals and we require social stimulation and interaction. That's part of being human. And when we're denied that, I think it leads to depression. It leads to aggravating things that get people drinking too much, perhaps smoking too much, probably watching TV too much.
There are also, I understand there have been cases of elder abuse. I've talked about elder abuse in another Monday Scoop episode, and the normal sort of elder abuse might be somebody calling up and saying, well, I'm covering driveways in your neighborhood and I'll cover your driveway for cheaper. Or I'm talking for your grandson Alan, who's lost in Europe and he needs some extra money. Would you send it to him? But I think in these cases, it's also, people calling with, I've got this wonderful cure for COVID, or I've got a wonderful preventive for COVID. And people in that age group may be more, especially if they're isolated and they're not in contact with good medical care, they're not in contact with their siblings or children who might be more educated, might be more susceptible to that kind of abuse than otherwise they would be. Their faculties aren't operating at their best capacity. And the last thing I've been thinking about is there was that Texas governor who said, well, let's do, I don't mind I'm a grandfather, I don't mind giving way, for the younger generation. Let's open up our lockdown here and let the economy flourish and let the older people die. Well, that's a great thing if you're an elder person to know that other people think you're expendable. Have we encountered any expendability fears?
Well, I think when this first broke and the hospitals essentially shut down, I think it kept people from coming in that may have serious, significant medical issues. And I think people have to understand that the hospital is open, that we do everything we can to prevent transmission of COVID. But if you have a medical issue, you should be going to the hospital. And I think I'm seeing people that are delaying, maybe delaying a cancer diagnosis or a significant diagnosis because they're afraid to come to the hospital. The hospital is a safe place to go. We do a lot of things to make sure that we control the number of cases of COVID that come in. So if you come in with a regular medical issue, it really should come in and not be afraid of coming in. That's one thing. I think our elder people, elder citizens, are certainly susceptible to that type of abuse that you're talking about. Also, sometimes I think if Harry can't go out and play golf all the time, perhaps he isn't quite as nice to his wife, and perhaps she is somewhat less forgiving of his foibles.
Yeah.
I think those are all things that arise, and I think, you have other things you don't think about. For example, AA has gone from a large number of meetings to really a couple of open meetings. And that isn't good for people that are in that program. I mean, the comradeship of AA is very important. It's a significant element in people helping other people to deal with addiction issues. There have been reports of overdoses doubling because people are isolated. They're not going to NA meetings, or they're not coming to a variety of groups. So we have to look at that social isolation as being detrimental to people's health.
Yeah. When I was looking at this online, I was thinking, I was hearing that there were possible ways of addressing this. Even though we are isolated and we can't meet people on a personal level, there is, first off, there's telemedicine, which does not help a lot, but it can be done. I mean, we can. Are these things though that people I guess there again we're dealing with two demographics. Younger people in this demographic of over 55 understand the electronics involved with telemedicine. You can get on a Zoom meeting. You can click on a link that will take you to a FaceTime type of meeting on your computer. Well, I don't know how well that serves people who are 80 or 75 or 85 who are not as tech savvy. Have you seen any of this in your own population?
I've seen it. I've lived it, trying to get onto Zoom meetings. And I'm reasonably tech savvy, and certainly my daughter is very tech savvy. So if she's around, I can get on. But I think telemedicine is good for what it is, but it's very limited, I think. I think people like to talk to a real person face to face. Is it difficult to do? Yes. I mean, I have my guardians of the door in my office, but I think it's important to see people when you can. It leaves me a little cold, but I didn't think laparoscopic gallbladders I thought it was a fad. So I have my concerns about telemedicine, but I think certainly there are ways people can be made to feel part of the community. Phone calls. Get your 8-year-old in there to show you how to set it up, so that people. It isn't perfect, but it's a good start. Somebody
actually called me the other day on my phone, a person I knew through Facebook, and she said it was an invitation to come to her room. Now, I had never seen this before, and as I accepted it because I knew the person, and she had never seen it before. She'd actually done it accidentally, but it was a sort of a FaceTime through Facebook. But it worked perfectly well, and I think it's something that's relatively easy to learn. And that kind of easy to pick up technology for a grandparent to see a grandchild would be one way to attempt to alleviate the isolation, a way of calling on somebody in person, as close as you can get in person in these fraught times. And knowing that somebody is going to call on you. If you're a 55-year-old and you've got an 85-year-old mother, to say, Mom, I'm going to check in on you every day. And I'll call you, and we can figure out if you hold your phone and I look like this, you can push that button and you'll see me, will be helpful. And you'll see me and you'll see your granddaughter who's with me. We can sort of teach that sort of basic tech, and that might be helpful. And knowing that maybe even doing a drive-by. I think my older daughter-in-law did this in San Diego. Her daughter couldn't have a real birthday party, but everybody she knew drove by and waved and said hello. And there was one of these out here on Nantucket, I think, a long time ago. It's just sort of letting people know the community is there.
We've used this. My wife I have a son with grandkids out in Northampton, and he's an OBGYN, and he's acutely aware of transmission. So he wants to make sure my wife and I stay alive, perhaps increase the what's in the will. But we do this with the kids. Call them up, FaceTime them, ask them questions about their schoolwork, what they're doing. And, it's not quite as good as pressing the flesh, but it's a good start. I mean, I became acutely aware of this. My daughter has a son who's 3.5 and spent a lot of time with us, but then got potentially exposed. And so went through a quarantine. And all of a sudden the house seemed sort of empty. And I really missed him, which I wasn't quite sure I was going to. He's a great little kid and keeps saying that I run around and fix boo-boos. So it's very interesting when you sort of get denied that and you recognize the degree of isolation, perhaps someone that doesn't have access to a computer, or doesn't have a smartphone, or doesn't know how to use a smartphone, can feel.
I guess you're right. I guess then just your basic phone calls and knowing that somebody is going to be checking in on you on a regular basis. Maybe for people who are religious, suggesting that they have phone calls with a member of their ministry or their rabbi or their priest. Maybe some sort of help or somebody to talk to about how they're feeling. I've seen that suggested. I hope that's right. Or reminding them, people who are older, I guess, have been through a lot more of adversity of one sort or another over their lives. So they perhaps should be, reminded of the fact that there is some level of resilience already there, that they can be reminded of. They've gotten through that. They'll get through this.
And that they're important.
And that they're important.
They're important.
Right?
That's the thing. I mean,
they're important in other people's lives.
They're important in other people's lives. And if you cut off that connection, I think it's very troubling.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Because
they're not expendable. No matter what the governor of Texas might think, they are not expendable.
Well, you could say the governors of
Maybe he's expendable.
Massachusetts and New York. And I was trying to think, Ezekiel, he was a health advisor to Clinton, suggested that, when you hit 70, you're pretty much all done.
I remember that. Yeah, well, that's fine for him. If he wants to volunteer to be
volunteer, I'll sign him right up.
Right,
But I think the connection is so important.
Right.
It's important for your mental health. It's important for your physical health, because they're innately connected. And if you're depressed, maybe you're not taking your meds. Maybe you're drinking too much, smoking too much, whatever. And so we have to make sure that we involve everybody.
That is another thing. I mean, there are pharmaceutical solutions to some of these issues. I don't know how not being a medical person, I don't know how they get prescribed, and I don't know how they get prescribed at a distance, but there are antidepressant medicines. Perhaps that's a solution for some people if they already have a connection with a doctor or a psychologist or psychiatrist.
Well, I think so. But since I know that about half the prescriptions I write are filled, and the ones that are filled they perhaps don't take, I think it's not as good as a hug. It's not as good as seeing your kid or seeing your grandchild or feeling part of the community. The medicines are wonderful, but there are still a lot of basic things that don't come in a bottle.
Yeah.
Of course, they don't have complications either.
Yeah, not the same kind anyway. The other thing that someone has suggested, I think, is practicing mindfulness, or at least being aware of where you are at this moment, at this time, rather than thinking of the global awfulness of it all. You could think of the global awfulness of it all, and we'll all be jumping off cliffs. I mean, how do you get past that and just focus on some level of gratitude for what we have today? It turned into a lovely day. And can we focus on that? Or is that a function of temperament? You're either a glass half empty, glass half full person.
I think it's a lot of temperament, and also the rapidity at which this arrived. You think back to Christmas last year, the holidays. this wasn't on the radar.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it's here. I can imagine in the 1918 pandemic how people felt. You know, the initial spring infection was one thing, but it was in the fall when it came back and 50 million people died. They had probably a somewhat longer period of time to think about it, but the rapidity of it, we don't change that rapidly.
How do you think people should cope with the COVID exhaustion that we're dealing with? You know, we've been wearing face masks for this long. We've been dealing with social distancing. We've not been able to go to restaurants. Everybody gets tired of it. What do you do with just getting tired of it feeling?
Well, I'd turn off the television. I think COVID fatigue is very real.
Yeah.
And the problem is wearing masks, social distancing, these things are effective measures, but they're not effective if you don't use them. And I think you have to think, why am I doing it? Is this going to be helpful? And I think the answer is you're doing it not so much for yourself as for other people. And it is effective. And you just have to reinforce that. And I'd also turn off the television because there's nothing on it.
Have you been made depressed by not enough people listening to the science?
I think not listening to the science is dangerous. But again, you know, it's evolving.
Yeah.
You know, if you think back to Fauci saying, well, you really don't need masks.
Right, in March or April.
Yeah,
right?
it changes.
Right.
But I mean, the basics, wearing a mask, social distancing, those are things that work.
Yeah.
But you just have to think of it, remind yourself why you're doing it, and get it done.
Yeah, well, that's the point that I think Jeff Drazen made. Science is not religion. Science changes with the new knowledge that it gets, and religion is something you believe and doesn't change. Science changes; it's allowed to change. The fact that it changes is a good thing. That makes it science and not religion. So we have to accept that as the fact that it's progressing the way it should progress. We learn more, and now we know better.
That's true. I mean, we know a lot more than we did in March.
Yeah, yeah.
And February.
Well, this age group is our 55 and up age group is more susceptible to the ravages of COVID because of the I guess general decline in our capacity to deal with major immune system attacks. Whether or not we have comorbid diseases, whether or not we have other susceptibilities, would you say that's true? Just because?
Well, I think that is true. You know, if you make it long enough, you do pick up some baggage. You know, whether it's diabetes, whether it's COPD, whether it's heart disease, these things all tend to build up and make us more susceptible. And the best thing is stay thin, eat your vegetables, get some exercise. Those things will help you, but it's an unfortunate fact that we are the ones that are susceptible. Mm-hmm. We are the bad demographic. Mm-hmm. And I always, every morning I'm reading medical journals and they're talking about that. And I say, hey, you know what? They're talking about me. And that is a little frustrating. Well, it's good that I'm in the bad demographic, but it's a scary proposition.
Right.
You have
long enough to be in the bad demographic. So that's
yes, exactly.
That's it. Well, thank you very much for being with me here today, Tim. I hope we have some good takeaways about trying to deal with our older patients in terms of trying to be with them virtually, if not physically, trying to remind them that we're here and that they are important and that they're not expendable. And hopefully they will get that message across in a way that can help them continue to get through this until we're on the other side with a vaccine and better treatment.
And I think it's important, these as you mentioned, we're not expendable because we're talking about ourselves.
Right.
But we can reach out and use the phone.
Right.
Walk by and say hi through the window.
Right.
I mean, these things are all important and easy to do.
And that what somebody said was a random act of kindness. Even if you are a grandparent and you say, I don't need help, well, fine, drop off some groceries and some candy anyway and some flowers.
Exactly.
And a note that says, I love you. And that would be very well received.
Yes, exactly.
Well, thank you so much. And
Thank
thank
you
you
very
again
much.
for joining me on Monday Scoop. I look forward to seeing you next week. Are there topics you'd like to know more about? Email me at mondayscoop@gmail.com. See you next Monday.